Galileo, as well as Academic Library Services. She acts as the executive director of Galileo. We have John Rempel from Center for Exclusive Design and Innovation. He's a quality assurance manager there and really just an all-around guru on accessibility. And then we will also have Carolyn Phillips, who is the director at CIDI. She will be presenting as well. And so I think we can go ahead and get started. Lucy, thank you everyone for joining us.
Good morning, everybody. And I know we're supposed to have our cameras off, but I will turn mine on very briefly just to wave at everybody. Hopefully you can see me. Good morning and thank you for being here. And I will turn it off again now. So I'm going to get started here. I'm going to jump right in and we'll be unveiling the new Galileo portal redesign with you all here this morning. But before I do that, I wanted to take just a few minutes and kind of walk through how did we get here. So why is my screen not responding? There we go. So this is basically how we got here, was through a lot of strategic planning and a lot of input and feedback from all of you. I started here at Galileo in 2016 and spent much of the first year going around the state, holding focus groups and strategic planning sessions and other meetings with all of our stakeholder groups. That's not just the university system, but also the technical colleges, public library service, private higher ed, K-12, including private K-12. And I got feedback from all of those groups, and we took all of that feedback and we came up with a new vision and mission for Galileo, which is up on our Galileo About Galileo website, as well as a strategic plan that has a number of high-level goals that we are still working towards executing. The first and most important of those high-level goals was around user experience. And the goal there is to create and maintain user-centered Galileo environments and interfaces that are easy to use, customizable, personalized, powerful, and comprehensive in scope. This is a long-term goal. It's a bit of a stretch goal. I'm not saying that we have fully reached this goal at this point, but we have certainly been taking a lot of actions over the past couple of years to try and move along the spectrum towards reaching this goal. Some of the specific things that we heard from you all and your staff, and in some cases your patrons in these sessions that we held, was that we needed to rethink authentication from the ground up, that we needed a simplified, elegant user experience, that we wanted to have, we wanted to optimize the default experience for each user group, so something different for kids versus scholars versus the general public, that we needed to provide easier access to databases, and take a look at everything that we were using, all of the tools that we were using to support these services and tools. So the first thing that we did, this was in, we started this a couple of years ago now, was the idea of improving authentication. And Open Athens was a huge step and is a huge step towards that. Russell's going to be doing a couple of sessions on Open Athens tomorrow, both around what comes next once you're on Open Athens, as well as if you're not on Open Athens yet, what Open Athens is and what it looks like. We also wanted to put in place a new development process, a new Agile-based development process. So we wanted it to be effective, efficient, and iterative. And you'll hear me mention iterative several times further in this presentation today. The development process that we took in place does aim for more frequent iterative improvements. And what we mean there is we're not going to be looking at having a single monolithic Galileo redesign every 5 years. Once we get past this release this summer, we will be having more frequent updates, smaller but more frequent updates. We also wanted to make sure that we put in place a development philosophy that built on national and international standards, especially accessibility. And as Joy mentioned, we'll have John and Carolyn talking about how we worked with them on accessibility at the end of this session today. We also wanted to follow user-centered design, And we also wanted to make sure that we were sharing knowledge across and amongst each other and not building, sort of silos of people who only worked on one particular area of Galileo. The other thing that we knew we wanted to do was to improve the Galileo Admin, the behind the scenes Galileo Admin. Some of you will have used this and some of you will have not in the past. You may have heard it referred to as the door or GLRI. If you haven't used those things, that's okay. There was no particular reason that you needed to. Mike will be doing a session this afternoon that introduces the new Galileo Admin though, and this will be an opportunity. It's a much easier to interface, maybe an opportunity for you to start using it locally. And then the main thing, of course, that we wanted to do was to improve the Galileo portal itself for the end users, for your end users. So our plan for improving the interface was to start with all of that feedback we got in the strategic planning process. We then put in place a Galileo Development Advisory Group, and these folks have been absolutely critical to this effort. These are folks who volunteered to be on the Galileo Development Advisory Committee, representing all of our different stakeholder groups. Some of them are probably on the call today. Thank you so much. It was a huge effort, and the effort continues. We are still using this group for feedback. So what they did was they started with inputs like the Galileo annual survey to see what people were saying needed to be improved around Galileo. They helped us define Galileo typical users and develop draft personas. Those personas are up on our website, and develop user stories from those personas. If you're not familiar with personas, this is an example of one. Christina, fictional 17-year-old student from Savannah. We looked at, what are her technology skills? How does she like to get support? What are her roadblocks? What does she need from Galileo? And then we really used that to inform the design moving forward. They provided ideas and inspiration, helped us develop draft requirements. As we had, wireframes and draft sites to show them, they provided ongoing feedback and recommendations, and still are. We also put in place formal accessibility testing. And again, John and Carolyn will talk more about what that process looked like in about half an hour. But the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation was a fantastic resource at Georgia Tech, and we have partnered with them throughout this process in a really close and connected way. So what we were talking about redesigning in this first phase, the Galileo portal. So we wanted to improve the login, the authentication process, improve database search functionality, improve the overall look and feel, make a design that is responsive, and then improve accessibility on the site. So with that, I'm going to step out of my formal slides and hit the demo. Let me stop sharing and then share there we go, web browser. Okay, so this is the old Galileo site. This is what it looks like currently. Just to remind everybody, this is the Galileo, when I say Galileo portal, this is what I'm talking about. So many of you may not ever see this page if you have a single sign-on set up, or if you're using express links, you may bypass this page, but this is what it looks like when you come and we don't know who you are. So if I wanted to log on as my normal self right here, I would have to choose public college or university. I would have to go in and find the University System Office and then hit go. I do have, I believe I've logged in fairly recently, so it's not going to ask me to enter my username and password again. But if I hadn't logged on recently, it would ask me to perhaps, it logs in using whatever mechanism is used locally. In my case, at the university system, it's going to ask me to select the University System Office, enter my username and password. We have two-factor authentication set up, so it's going to ask me to confirm that it's me, and then I'll be in. But this is what the portal looks like once you're logged on. I am currently logged on as the University System Office. Just to remind everybody what's here, there's links to About Galileo. This is a EBSCO search. So if I do a search here for cats, it's just going to go out to EBSCO, and it will search here in the EBSCO index, and then come back with a bunch of results around cats. We're not actually changing this part right now. That will be phase 2. but I just wanted to remind everybody what that search box does at the top. There's an advanced search here that goes out to the advanced EBSCO search. Then you can, there's different ways of finding databases and journals. So you can browse by subject, browse by type. There's an A to Z list. Here's a journals A to Z list, which may look different depending on which institution or type of stakeholder group you're logged in as. In this case, I'm going, I believe, to the EBSCO full text finder, but some of you may have Primo or something else set up there. And then back on the main search page, there's a place here to spotlight a particular resource, system alerts. So if there's an issue right now, there's an issue with eBook Central, so that's an alert. And then there's links to some news about the information system, university system office, since that's who I'm logged on as, and then some help. And then across the bottom, there's different interfaces. I'm currently defaulting into the Scholar interface, but there's also one for general use that looks very similar. There's one for high school that looks very similar. The only one that looks significantly different is the kids one. And this is just an artifact of how Galileo was set up originally back in the day. We needed to have a different interface for kids, and because of the way it was architected, everybody gets a kids interface. So that's one of the things that's going to be changing here as we roll out our new interface. All right, so the new interface, and as a reminder, we wanted to make it look cleaner. We wanted to make the login process better, make it more responsive, make it accessible, and here it is. So here's what the new interface is going to look like. Now, this first image up here at the top is called a hero image with the stars and the telescope. This is actually not the final image. We are still working through. We almost had it ready for today, but not quite. But this is a stock image for now. Then the new image will be space themed and will kind of echo the Galileo logo up here at the top, but it's not quite ready yet. It will be before we go live. What you're seeing here right now is the login page. So instead of having to select from an accordion menu, I can just start typing my institution here. So University System Office, and it will pop up. Now again, I've logged on recently, so it's going to go ahead and just take me straight in. If I hadn't logged in, I would be prompted to log in with whatever the local method is for logging in at that point. And then you can see that I am logged on as the system office up there. So let's go ahead and do a search. This is, again, just the EDS search up here at the top. So if I do this search here, it's going to work exactly the same way as it does now. We will be changing this, but that's going to come in phase 2 of our redesign. So this first phase, this EDS search works exactly the same way, including having to go out to EBSCO and bring back the results as it did on the old interface. Where things start, and there's still an advanced search, and you still have the information about who you're logged in on, who you're logged in as at the top. Where it starts looking significantly different is down here with the databases. So now we have some information about what kind of subjects you may see on database by subject, and you can view all. We have added some tags here to help with accessibility. You can also see databases by type, or you can view all types here. So this is a list of all of the different database types that we have and how many databases are in each one. You can, down here, you can see a list of all databases, which is just simply an A to Z list of all of the databases available to you. As a university system person, I have 216. That will depend on which individual institution you're logged in as. All journals will just, again, take me straight out to that journals list, a journals A to Z list. This is a nice new feature. I can now search by type of what kind of database am I looking for. So I search for literature, and it will come up and tell me that I have 64 literature databases available to me. And then I can actually, limit that even further. I can say I just want the ones that have full text. And then, of course, if I click on the link, it will take me straight in there to that database because I'm already authenticated. Back to the main screen here. Now we move down to the spotlight area. And instead of just having one spotlighted resource, now we have 6 available spotlighted resources. And these are all going to be customizable at the local level through your Galileo admin. So Mike White in his sessions will be explaining how you can do this. It's a very easy process to change this. And these can be databases that you want to spotlight, but they could also be things that are not databases. For example, you could add a spotlight for your Ask a Librarian service or your summer reading program or whatever it is that you would like to highlight here for your local libraries here in this spotlight area. And then down at the bottom, we have, again, information about whoever it is I'm logged in as. This will be specific to if I'm the university system, I'm logged in there, that's what'll show up here. If it's an individual institution, that's what will show up here. Right now, this is, if you want to change this, you need to contact us, but we'll be working on allowing you the ability to customize this area as well moving forward. And then the Galileo news and any system alerts will be here at the bottom as well. And then at the very bottom is information about Galileo and its programs, governance, links to the privacy policy, our social media links, so on and so forth. The other thing I want to show you right here is I mentioned that, so I've shown you the login process. I'll go back to that in just a second here. I've shown you the new look and feel. It's also fully responsive. So I changed this just now to, this is approximately what it would look like on a phone. You can see that it resizes on the fly, or, a tablet, maybe would look more like this as opposed to a full screen computer. So this is fully responsive right out of the box. Let me log out real quick and log in as somebody else. So I'm logged in right now as the University System Office. So I'm getting sort of the grown-up view, the full portal experience for Galileo. If I log out, it takes me back to the screen. One of the things you'll notice is that it has remembered that I have recently logged in as the University System Office. So the next time I come, I don't even need to start typing. The other things I wanted to show here, let's say I start typing Fulton County. It's going to tell me that there are K-12 schools that are Fulton County. It's going to say that there are public libraries that are in Fulton County. If you know which one you're looking for, you can come straight over and start typing that. I'm going to go ahead and log in right now as Abbott's Hill Elementary School in Fulton County. Now they are not yet, our public libraries and the K-12 libraries are not yet on Open Athens. So they're still using the password right now. So I'm going to log on as what is hopefully the correct password for Fulton County schools. And what you'll see now is that they will default straight into a very kid-friendly interface. At the top, it tells me that I'm logged on as an elementary school student in Fulton County schools. Once we get the K-12 folks up on Open Athens, it will actually list the specific school up here. But for right now, it's just at the system level elementary view. This should be the final image for elementary school kids. You can see it's much more kid-friendly, little cartoon guy over here. There's some animation going on with the stars and constellations, which is pretty cute. And then when I start scrolling down, you'll see they have a bit more streamlined view. They don't get the ability to search for databases, for example. Some of the feedback we got from the GDAC committee was that they really just needed to have the spotlight resources show up here. So these are resources that are being highlighted specifically for elementary school kids in Fulton County. And again, these could be changed. If Fulton County wants to highlight something different, that's fine, they can do that. You can see a list of all databases, and then the about and Galileo news is pretty much the same at the bottom here. If you want to change to a different view, let's say, for example, that there's a teacher in the Fulton County schools, they can very quickly come in and change a different view, and then they're back at the much more robust Galileo interface as an educator. And here, instead of just having a few databases available to them that have been very carefully curated for elementary school kids, they've got the full almost 200 databases available to them. There is also a middle school view, which is kind of again, slightly differentiated from the elementary school view, and has a different version of the spaceman. And they do have more resources available to them in middle school and high school than the elementary school view. If I log out, it's going to remember that I have recently logged in as Abbott's Hill Elementary School and the University System office. It will actually remember up to 5 different selections that you've made here. We are limiting it to 5 right now, but most folks you will have 1 or 2 or maybe 3 places that they will go regularly. But just as an example for myself, I log in as the University System as my default. I also have a login, an affiliation with UGA, so I could log in as that. I have my public library card, of course, so I could be logging in as Athens Public Library System, and then my child is in the Clark County School System, so I could be logging in as them to the K-12 experience sometimes. So that's pretty much what I wanted to show on the portal side here, as far as the changes that end users will be seeing. I do want to take a couple minutes here and talk about the staff view. Well, the About Galileo pages, which are mostly for library staff, because those are going to be changing a little bit as well. So this is what the About Galileo page currently looks like. So you can see it's very text heavy, has a lot of great information about Galileo, who the participating institutions are, our governance policies, assessment, information about Galileo staff, news and events. We did redesign the for library staff part to make it a little bit more streamlined fairly recently. So we've got our training site there, our marketing toolkit, past presentations and materials, and then usage statistics, which is quite a bit of what people are, that and governance is often what people are looking for when they're coming to the About Galileo site. You'll notice that there's not a lot of information about some of the programs that we offer here. For example, there's no way to get to Affordable Learning Georgia easily, or to the Galileo Interconnected Libraries, the GIL program that serves the university system specifically. So we're redesigning this as well. This is what the new About Galileo is going to look like. All of the same information, you can still get to everything that you could get to from the old site. It's just streamlined, and we've brought some things to the forefront. So right off the bat, you can see the different Galileo programs are highlighted here. So the portal, of course, will just take you straight back to the site that I was just demoing for you. Affordable Learning Georgia, which is our online open educational textbooks and open educational resources program, gets a lot of attention from the legislature. That's highlighted right here as well. Digital Library of Georgia, and then the Galileo Interconnected Libraries highlighted right there. Up at the top, information about Galileo, its mission, history, the participating institutions, Galileo staff, which we have some pictures of us up there now. There I am. There's Ken. There's Mike. And then the data and statistics. And then if we have any job opportunities that we want to highlight, those will be there as well. The programs of Galileo listed here again. Our governance. So if you're looking to find out, how we get our advice on how to move forward with things, you can go to our governance area. Information about the sort of information that may be of interest to the community. And then the tools and training area here at the far right. So again, that's the marketing toolkit, presentations and materials. The statistics area has been, will take you straight into the Galileo usage statistics tool. I just that just opened up in a new window. Let me close that one. And then training, again, will take you to all of the different training that we have. Support, and the support button is available here and on the new Galileo Search site. On the Galileo Search site, it's available at the top right, and it's also available on the About Galileo page. The support page has changed a little bit. You can search for if there are any issues that we know about at the moment, those will be highlighted at the top. So again, the eBook Central issue is being highlighted right now. You can search across particular FAQs that have already been asked in our knowledge base. You can see what the most asked questions are, browse questions by category. We are in the process of cleaning up our FAQs. As you might imagine, a lot of the stuff that was on there was outdated or had been created, you know, specifically for a new service when we were rolling it out, but maybe doesn't need to be there any longer. And then some of the, we're having to create a few new questions, FAQs, to address new functionality in the in the redesigned portal. So we're still updating those. And then if you don't find what you want, we do sometimes get people reaching out to us for research help or reference assistance, and we really try to redirect them back to you to get that assistance. So we have a link here saying, you know, if you need research help, it's really your library that needs to help you with that. But if you have a technical issue, you can contact us through one form. And if you have just a more general question or concern, you can contact us through another form right there. And I think that was about everything I wanted to show you. So let me head back to my slides and talk a little bit about next steps. Let's see. I have to go full screen again. Yes, let me scroll down to the right slide. Okay, here we go. All right, so that was the demo. And again, what we tried to accomplish here was to streamline the login process on authentication, which I hope you saw that's been just really, really improved. The database search functionality to help people find specific databases, the look and feel, the responsive design, and then the accessibility. And John and Carolyn will talk through some of the specific things we did to improve accessibility in just a few moments. We have also improved the Galileo Admin, previously known as the GLRI or the door. And I'm not going to go into exactly what we've changed there because Mike White has a whole session on that this afternoon. And it's at 2 o'clock. I think he's got, I think he's broken the record for number of people signed up for it. So clearly there's a lot of interest in the admin module. Just to give you a little teaser, this is an example of what a particular,
one second, Cheryl.
What a particular resource, particular resource would have looked like in the old door. And, you know, this is what it's going to look like in the new one. But if you want more information, please do come to Mike's session this afternoon or watch it after it's been recorded and shared.
I'm sorry, let me jump in here for a second. I can't find the person who is speaking now, but if everyone could mute themselves.
A couple of orders, but the one in particular, I need to.
Can you mute everyone, Joy, and I'll just unmute myself real quick?
Teachers,
Hold on a second.
but they're not showing up on napkin.
All right, can everybody still hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. So again, the admin module will be this afternoon at 2. Mike will be giving a good overview of that, and then there will be additional training, more in-depth training on how to use the new admin module as we approach go live. Click in here again, I think. There we go. I also don't want to underplay the massive redesign that needed to happen to the code that was underneath our old search portal and our old Galileo admin. We've been around since 1994. Some of the code that was serving up the admin and the portal probably dated back to 1994. So it was a huge effort that I really want to appreciate. You know, Mike Canning, Brad Baxter, all of the developers who work for Galileo over at UGA. It was a huge effort just to clean up, modernize, and build and put in place an infrastructure so that we could then develop this new fantastic admin module and redesign the portal. We are planning, as I mentioned, to do a phase 2 of our portal redesign. That it will be coming a little later. That's going to focus more on what you get once you do a search in that search box at the top of the screen. So we don't know exactly what that's going to be yet. We do know that we want to take full advantage of Open Athens there. So and that means that we may be able to pull in not just customization at the institutional level, but perhaps personalization at the individual level, individual user. We have identified a number of features in this first phase that we think we would like to implement in phase 2. We just need to figure out if we can put them in place. For example, perhaps we don't want to keep using the EDS interface. Perhaps we want to put our own open source search results in place. A lot of institutions have done that. It gives us more flexibility down the road. We may want to look at integrating other sources via API. So the Digital Library of Georgia, we may want to pull in a different way, or Affordable Learning Georgia, or the New Georgia Encyclopedia, any number of places that we may want to pull data from and bring it in that perhaps we could not have gotten using the EDS interface alone. Again, this customization based on attributes, if we know that you are at a particular school or even in a particular grade, we may be able to provide more customization. If we know you're a nursing student, perhaps we can provide nursing resources front and center. Perhaps we want to allow users, individual users, to customize what they're seeing in their search results. We're thinking that we may want to use a Bento approach, at least for higher ed. This is an example of a Bento approach at Cornell. I'm not saying that it would look like this for everybody, but you can see that instead of having one long list of results like we do now, it's broken out into these different sort of tiles. So there's one tile for journals and periodicals, one for articles and full text, one for books, one for musical recordings. This might be something we want to implement for a university student, but it may not. We may want to implement something completely different for a public library user or a K-12 student. So the go live dates, the important information here. This first phase 1 will be going live on July 21st. So just over a month from now. And that will include updating the About Galileo pages, the Galileo Admin, and then the Galileo Portal search page. So the landing page to the Galileo portal, not the results, just the landing page. Phase 2, if there are major changes, a major new release, if it's going to look massively different on the search results, then that will probably come in summer 2021. But again, we're also trying to take this iterative approach. So you may see some smaller changes, getting pulled into the search before summer 2021. You'll see things happening after summer 2021, certainly. That's it from me. I can pause here and see if there are any questions that have come in before I hand it over to John and Carolyn for the accessibility part. Yes, Joy?
There were a few questions. Angela asked, in higher ed, will there be a way for teacher ed programs to access the kids version?
Okay, so you can certainly access the resources that that there are a number of databases that will be useful for kids that you can access. If you're talking about you want to access the actual interface, we'll need to talk about that. We could probably do something, but it probably won't be July 21st.
Okay. We had another question from Celeste. What changes are in store for public libraries?
Okay, so let me actually log on as a public library real quick, and I can just show you. Am I still sharing my window? Are you seeing Galileo Support on the page right now?
Yes.
Okay, so let me come back over here and log in as a public library. So let me log on as the Fulton County Library System, and I'm going to have to remember. I think this is there. Nope, wrong one. Let me do that one other time. Sorry. I always get this slightly backwards. All right, so now I'm logged on as a public library patron. Right now, because you're not on Open Athens yet, public libraries, you're still logged on as at the system level. But what you're going to see is that same databases, searching the databases that are available to you by subject or by type. And then the spotlighted resources will be specific to public libraries. So in this case, these are the default ones that we have put in place for public libraries. Fulton County can change these if they would like to. To whatever you would like. Summer reading program, go ahead and put that in, but we've put these in as defaults. So you can see it's the same, it's the adult version of the Galileo interface for public libraries. But the spotlighted resources can be absolutely customized. And again, this hero image is going to be changing to something that is still space-like, but is not this particular image before we go live. So that's it for public libraries.
Okay, and we had a third question, which I'm glad it was brought up. J Davis 14 says, where would the GKR be located? GKR for everyone is the Georgia Knowledge Repository.
Yeah, so that's a specific database. I don't recall if we have that one available for public libraries or not. Let's see. So there it is. So I just searched for Georgia Knowledge Georgia Knowledge, actually GKR. Probably I could have just searched for GKR. Let me just make sure. So that's a particular database and it will come right up. The other thing I want to point out is that, let me go back here, that this search at the top is the everything search, the Discover search. So everything that has been indexed in the EBSCO Discovery Service will show up if you search here. So you don't have to go find a particular database. You can just go ahead and do your search right here. And we have indexed the Georgia Knowledge Repository in that search. So items that are in the GKR will show up if you search for them here.
One more question just came in from Gabrielle. Is there an additional level of access under public libraries, for example, youth and adults?
So we talked about that, and that's something that we could possibly implement, a kids view for the public libraries. We could possibly implement that down the road. We went out and right now there's not. Right now, the way that you would accomplish that is by, putting in a spotlighted resource for your local kids page. We went out and looked at a number of libraries and found that most of them were linking just straight into the grown-up version of Galileo, and then had their local kids pages that they were curating and hosting on their local systems. If that is something that you would like, if you would like to have a kids view of Galileo at the public library level, that is probably something we could develop, but it's not going to be ready for July 21st.
Okay, and that's all the questions we have right now.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing then, and I will hand it over to John and Carolyn to talk about accessibility.
Excellent. I was just going to turn on my camera to say hello to everybody so you know who I am, and thrilled to see so many folks on, 125. That's outstanding. So I'm going to now turn off my camera just to be respectful of everybody's broadband and bandwidth and all of those things. So my name is Carolyn Phillips, and I am thrilled to be presenting here with Lucy and with John. You're going to hear great things in just a few minutes from John Rempel, who's on our team here at the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation at Georgia Tech. I wanted to tell you, just as we start out, how much I appreciate the good work that Lucy and her team are doing. We have worked with a lot of folks and a lot of partners, and I was blown away in our first conversations with Lucy, and it's been a great exchange of us learning from Lucy, but also being able to share a lot. And it's one of those things where a relationship exponentially grows and becomes much bigger than it would have. And it's just the right combination of partners. So Lucy, thank you for your leadership and vision of inclusion, of accessibility, and keeping all of those things in mind. We'll move to the next slide. And I'm just going to give y'all a little brief history of CIDI. And I was going to let you know that, for me, this is not just professional, but this is really personal, really and truly. I am one of those folks, one of the people, millions of people in the United States, hundreds of thousands of people in Georgia who have non-visible disabilities that absolutely affect my life, especially when it comes to print. So print-related disabilities, I have dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and auditory processing. And I was given a keynote a few years ago to the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions about my experiences and struggles with learning disabilities. And it was really exciting to be able to say thank you to the librarians across the world, but also it's great to say thank you to the librarians right here, because it really was a librarian who helped me at Gritter's Library in Cobb County with my own learning disabilities. I have a great love for reading. I download books all the time. And right now, I've got 4 different books that I'm reading. It's not unusual for me to go through anywhere between 50 and 60 books a year. And that really wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for making really, books more accessible, these interfaces more accessible, Galileo more accessible. This Affordable Learning Georgia, what an exciting project, and for everybody to have access to that. So Lucy, thank you for your vision, and thank you to everybody who's participating today. Our history here at Georgia Tech, the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation, is really a merger of services and practices, what typically would be known as AMAC, accessibility. A lot of you may know us by AMAC. We merged with the Center for Assistive Technology and Environmental Access, CATIA. So now we have this very robust center that has practice going into research, going into policy, going into education. And that's a very exciting juncture to be living within that synergy. And I think this project is one of those excellent examples of what happens when you have all of those things informing practice and informing like end user experience. So that's great. CATIA grew out of collaborations really in the late 70s. And then AMAC, we started in 2005 under the University System of Georgia. And as a result of students basically needing accessible text. If you're ever in the Atlanta area, and once we move past this COVID-19 pandemic, we would welcome you to come visit us. Lucy's been on site with us many times, and her team. And so, we would welcome you because there really is a lot to see on site. And we'll move to the next slide. So when we're talking about who we serve, a lot of people ask this question. We serve folks literally across the street, within our own Georgia Tech environment, within our own library systems, and then, of course, the University System of Georgia, USG, higher education institutions literally across the country. We have one of our programs serves over right at 4,000 different colleges and universities. We work with state and federal governments. We work with a lot of library systems, actually, in helping them with their own systems and making sure that they're accessible, and both in the built environment and the virtual environment, digital environments. And then we have a lot of national and international nonprofit government agencies and also for-profits. Last November, I had the great honor of going and being one of the keynote speakers for the World Usability Day. You heard Lucy talking about the importance of UX, usability, user testing, and I was honored to be able to go to the UN in Geneva, Switzerland, and present 2 workshops and do a keynote with Bryce Johnson, who's one of the leaders when it comes to usability and inclusion at Microsoft. And so it was very exciting. And so we really are, just like the slide says, helping people across the street and around the globe. And we'll move to the next slide. So Lucy, I got very excited, and everybody on this in this presentation, you know, I got very excited whenever I saw the release date is indeed, I knew that's what we were aiming for, but July 26th, right around the same time that Galileo is going to be released, that is when we are collectively celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which has been transformational in so many people's lives, in my life, in the work that we're doing collectively here together, in the whole idea that we're talking about accessibility for built-in virtual environments and digital environments. So I hope that all of you are aware of this, and then also that we're doing something around this. And Lucy, maybe we could talk about tying that together even more and celebrating, because that's a big win for everybody. When we're talking about accessibility, and we'll move to the next slide, really and truly, I think a lot of us are paying attention to what's going on in the world right now. There's all kinds of movements that are really trying to move everything forward. And what we've got some photos here that a friend of mine actually took, Tom Olin. And these are early photos from movements from the disability community as we were trying to get the whole accessibility, inclusion, you know, even just basic rights for folks with disabilities into law, into legislation, and into practice. And so it's exciting that at this moment right here today, we're celebrating that this was not a battle. Lucy is the one who came to us proactively, and that's awesome. So as we see it, accessibility is a human right for people with disabilities. There's a picture over to the left that says, I can't even get to the back of the bus, and it's on the back of a wheelchair. And this is when we were trying to make buses more accessible. The photo over to the right has Justin Dart. He's the man with the cowboy hat, and he was one of the writers of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Judy Human is a woman that's got a white shirt, and she's using a power wheelchair. And they're underneath a sign that says, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And that's obviously a beautiful statement and powerful statement by Martin Luther King. So just keeping that in mind as we're moving through this talk today and through your work. And so thank you for your collaboration. Thank you to all of you who work every day for human rights and for civil rights and for inclusion. We'll move to the next slide. So at the Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation, all of our work is about accessibility. It's about human rights. It's about civil rights. It's about the manifestation of the vision of the Americans with Disabilities Act becoming reality. And so we do focus on solutions that offer utility, durability, usability. We do all kinds of work when it comes to consultation, you know, going in and helping people figure out what does the built environment look like, what can things, you know, what could we do to change things. We've worked on public access, you know, what do those computer systems need to look like that are in libraries, for example. Also, what do they look like within the you know, corrections system and any number of other systems, one-stop shops. We provide Braille. We focus in science, technology, engineering, and math-related Braille, so STEM. We provide and do research on Braille, but also captioning, and provide those services. And then, of course, creating accessible digital content and providing assistive technology solutions. We've worked with our library system throughout Georgia to get assistive technology kits created and into the field. And so just tying all that together so you know who we are. When we're talking about our print and text services, Braille is still incredibly relevant. And it's about literacy, really and truly. And so we are committed to producing high quality Braille that is accurate. And as I said, focused on STEM subjects, but we actually have an amazing contract with the National Library of Congress. You may have received some of our books, and we produce those books and get them out throughout the US in Braille, and it's a very exciting collaboration. We actually do that here at Georgia Tech, and a lot of people don't know that. And we'll move to the next slide. EText, there's a whole lot to consider when we're talking about electronic text and different formats, whether it's DAISY or EPUB. A lot of people still prefer PDFs or docs. And so, making sure that, once again, those are high quality products that come out. We actively, every day, pretty much every working day, are converting textbooks into accessible formats. And these are some of the formats that we produce. And we, yesterday, Dr. Morrison, who's in charge of our EText services, was presenting to an international group of librarians and also service providers all about our different evolutions, if you will, in DAISY and some of the other formats. And so it's great to also see that it, once again, practice into policy and research, and then all the way back into practice. So we'll move to the next. Our Tools for Life services are really dynamic, and happy to help you when it comes to figuring out what solutions. This is just a picture of some of our teammates, and a lot of you are familiar with them, know that we're here to help you in any way that you need. And we'll move to the next slide. So when we're talking about digital accessibility and UX services, we are uniquely positioned. Part of why Lucy was knocking on our door is because of all the other services that we offer, but a big one has to do directly with this and the great work that John Rempel, who you're going to hear from in just a moment, and his team have done, that great work. And so looking at what does it mean to be inclusive, to run those UX testing, to actually use those results to actually inform excellent design. And so you'll hear more about that in just a moment. And we'll move to the next slide. So captioning services, I'm still concerned because I see a lot of folks depending upon AI, artificial intelligence. They're just turning on the YouTube AI, and they don't realize that that's not really accurate. There's still a big need for live remote captioners, and we're working with folks who are creating AI captioning. It's getting close, but it's still not quite there. Also providing, we have voice artists that do audio description and provide those types of services. And the next slide talks about that. And so we just wanted to make sure that you are aware that we have these services right here at Georgia Tech, right here to help you. And it's something that's important for everybody to focus on, how can everything that we create, all media, be as accessible as possible. And sometimes it is about audio description and describing what are those visual components that are in there that you may not pick up on otherwise. And we'll move to the next slide. So our research components, they really are dynamic in moving the conversation forward. I was talking to some of our folks yesterday who are in Washington, D.C. They wanted in real time just some information about some of our research and findings because they were in a conversation about appropriations when it comes to actually print materials. And so having this combination and where we're looking across the lifespan, but also across and looking at digital environments and making sure that accessibility is right there. This is an area that's been under-researched, not researched as much as we would like. So we're always looking for partners in that space, and let us know if you're interested. And we'll move to the next. So when we're talking about disabilities, a lot of times people don't necessarily know, what we mean or who does this apply to. And so when we're talking about this, we really are talking about folks that have vision-related disabilities, auditory-related disabilities, speech-related disabilities. On this next slide, you'll see that, there's a whole host of folks, including people that have mental health-related disabilities. And I'm very happy to see that more people are starting to understand that indeed that is a disability. Also thinking about cognitive and neurological disabilities. We're doing some really exciting work with publishers, and then also with folks that are within the public health now, of making their materials more accessible and making sure that when we're talking about people with disabilities, we're talking about the whole experience. If you move to the next slide, you can see that it's over 61 million people with disabilities. 61 million, that's a huge number of people with disabilities in the US, where their disability affects their ability to see, hear, communicate, reason, walk, or perform other life functions. I'm one of those folks. But there's a whole bunch more of us. And so I appreciate that here in this work that we're doing collaboratively with our awesome team, the Galileo team, and with Lucy, that they're proactively thinking and designing before people even show up with disabilities, that they design for us, they design for everybody, which is awesome. And we'll just move to the next. When we're talking about assistive technology solutions, and we can move to the next slide. There's several that are out there, but particularly when we're working within library systems, we're often talking about text-to-speech or speech, screen readers. Usually, just so you have an idea of what we're talking about here, it's something like Claro Read, which is a software product. It highlights as it reads. I use solutions just like this every single day throughout the day, so that I can get that bimodal feedback where I can see it and hear it, and then I know it. And so high quality screen readers, that's what this Claro Read product offers. Also, it can save to audio, so you can create your own accessible text. So there are times that when I'm doing a search in Galileo, I may just capture some text, put it, run it through Claro Read, and then I can save it to audio. And that's very, very helpful. And we'll move to the next slide. Oh, Read and Write Gold. It's another product that we have here that we offer. If y'all want to try any of these things, let us know. I think sometimes it's helpful to know how other folks are experiencing text, especially those of us with disabilities. And so this allows something similar. You have more options when it comes to voice and those types of features. And so there's a whole bunch out there to think about. There are also magnification programs. It's amazing when you're thinking about that sometimes it's as simple as just making the text bigger. Lucy, you were talking about how dynamic the display is and the screen is. It's been designed for those of us who need to zoom in. That's very progressive. And so when I was listening to the demo, I got very excited because I was like, yes, this is indeed going to work with screen magnifiers. It's definitely going to work with screen readers and also with text-to-speech. So the next one that we're talking about is really screen readers. This is for folks who have more vision-related disabilities where they need the whole screen read to them. And common ones that we see, it's JAWS, NVDA. NVDA actually has a very dynamic software program that is actually free to a lot of folks. And then, of course, VoiceOver for the Mac. And so to have that whole display be able to be read out loud is incredible. And so once again, designing for everyone. When we're talking about mainstream text, there are a lot of folks who are going to be interfacing with Galileo that are using their voice to navigate. So making sure that we understand that there are folks who are using voice recognition to navigate the whole screen and to be able to do searches and all of that. Often it's something like Dragon, naturally speaking. I use this every day. We have other folks in our life that use it every single day for different reasons, because perhaps they're not able to use their hands or what have you. And so this turns spoken words absolutely into text. And then when we're talking about other mainstream solutions, we're finding more and more people using things, that we would have considered assistive technology way back, but now everyone is using it in the mainstream. Things like Siri, which we find in Apple, Google Now, provided by Google, and then of course Cortana by Microsoft. All kinds of solutions. And then there's also smart speakers, things like, the Echo, Amazon Echo, and then Hey Google. So all kinds of things to consider when we're talking about how folks are interacting with Galileo, how they're getting information, how they're navigating, how they're downloading books, etc. So I'm going to turn this on over to John Rempel, and he will walk you through the rest of this. And thanks again, Lucy, for the collaboration. And it's so great to be meeting with all of you. John?
Thank you, Carolyn. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you sound great.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Well, both Lucy and Carolyn laid a large part of the groundwork of what I'm going to be discussing. I'll be relatively brief, but like Carolyn had mentioned, ICT, Information Communication Technology, and User Experience Services is an offering that we provide at CIDI. And it's played a large role with the Galileo team. And I'm trying to there we go. I didn't have a keyboard focus there for a moment. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Access GA very briefly, because this played an initial role in our work with the Galileo team. And as Carolyn said, the Galileo team has been very proactive. It's been a great experience for us to work with them, because we've been working with them from the wireframe stage, from the mock-up stage, with the design team before it's even hard-coded. And that really is the time to, if you can, to start building in accessibility, start thinking about accessibility. And it's, as both Lucy and Carolyn alluded to, it's much more than just a digital hurdle that we're dealing with. It's a paradigm shift to think of things outside of our own immediate experience. And it's like those personas that Lucy had talked about. Who is your target audience? And especially in this coronavirus era we live in, a large percentage of people now have what you may consider a temporary disability, noise level, distraction. There's so much using different equipment in your home. So this really is, all of us. And I really like the term that Carolyn uses a lot, that's been very active in the, disability movement, is nothing about us without us. Pulling people in with disabilities as you're testing products and services and websites and applications really is the way to go to get, to number one, get what the feedback is from people with disabilities, but also making sure that what you're rolling out is fully accessible. So the Access GA initiative played a role in this. It's funded through the ADA Coordinator's Office, and it allowed us to kickstart some of the services that we offered to the Galileo team. It includes web accessibility evaluations, technical assistance. We work with state agencies and some higher ed institutions across Georgia. And then also WAG, the Web Accessibility Group, plays a part in that. It's more geared toward higher ed institutions. And with the limited funds we have, we are able to provide some webinars on some concepts and recommendations related to accessibility. So some of the services that we offer to the Galileo team, which we also offer to other organizations, is really three components of our web accessibility process. The what, so it's an executive summary and breakdown of accessibility findings in alignment with national and international standards and guidelines. The how, we offer a comprehensive analysis of accessibility issues captured in a spreadsheet. So it's not just telling an organization what's wrong, but we also provide remediation solutions on how to fix it. And then this is fairly unique. We provide an MP4 video walkthrough illustrating accessibility issues and highlighting usability issues as well for people with disabilities. So it pulls together the programmatic analysis of the site and the usability components of it, and we offer that as an MP4 video so that individuals who aren't necessarily developers, aren't necessarily dealing with the code, can very quickly and easily understand why some of these issues create such a barrier for people with disabilities. Very briefly, I'm going to talk about some of the changes that the Galileo team has made, and they've gone way beyond just the basic compliance. You know, there's always more work to do, but they have come a really long way. And the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, this is an international set of guidelines and standards. They break it down into 4 main areas: perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. Let's talk about some of the changes that Galileo has made under the perceivable category. Lucy touched on this already, the reflow, so that you can actually experience the Galileo application on various mobile devices, different screen sizes, without that horizontal scroll, and that's under 1.4.10 under WCAG. That's a level AA requirement. So compare the left screen to the right screen. It's a huge difference. Keep in mind, again, this benefits everyone across the board, not just people with disabilities, but this is a WCAG standard. Under perceivable, we have identify input purpose. We have 2 screenshots. The one on the left is the updated Galileo form. The one on the right is the old one. Visually, you don't really see a lot of differences, but for a screen reader user who's blind and requires that programmatic attention and focus to the labels that they're on, the left screen is going to be entirely accessible. So great work on the Galileo team's part for incorporating that. I can't emphasize enough how important page titles are, not only for people with disabilities, but for everybody, especially if you have multiple tabs open. It gets really complex really quickly. And this is a 2.4.2 requirement under WCAG, under operable, and it's a level A. WCAG has 3 levels, A, AA, AAA, and they get progressively more stringent as far as the requirements needed to incorporate them. So this is level A, which is the bare minimum requirement. And again, Galileo has done an excellent job labeling their page titles. Operable. So Galileo has now incorporated skip to main content links. Not only is this beneficial for people who are blind, having to navigate all that information in the header, but it really allows someone who may have some ambulatory challenges, maybe is using the keyboard alone or a peripheral device like a switch to navigate. And if they can access that skip to main content, they can save themselves a whole lot of time. So that's under 2.4.1 under WCAG, under operable bypass blocks. Excuse me. And understandable labels or instructions. Below we have 2 images. The first one is the improved Galileo site, where the search button is actually labeled as search, clear, very understandable. The one below that simply has a magnifier, and although for some people it seems really obvious, there's 2 things going on here. Not only does the bottom search button not have any text to it, but the magnifier alone, for some people that might indicate increasing or decreasing magnification. That magnifier is often used for that purpose. And then programmatically, they've made improvements to make this much more sound. Error identification. This reduces, when this is done right, it reduces a whole lot of frustration and potentially some very significant barriers for individuals specifically in this case, individuals who are blind. So this is under 3.3.1 error identification. It's level A, bare minimum requirement. If an input error is automatically detected, the item that is in error is identified and the error is described to the user in text. So very clearly displayed on the left is sorry, comment not sent. On the right, a screen reader user would need to tab through several times to understand what form fields are even required and which ones have not been filled out successfully. So another major change from an accessibility standpoint. And then the last one under robust is greater inclusion of way aria. Some of you may be familiar with W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium. They also consist of a subgroup called WAY, the Web Accessibility Initiative. And they have developed a protocol for ARIA, accessible rich internet access. And what this is you won't see a difference visually on the screen, but it is code that allows a screen reader user to better access content on the page. And it really is primarily for screen reader users. And way ARIA is used to identify interface components to screen readers, such as custom coded elements that don't include HTML, that is easily identified by assistive technology. And then previous version of Galileo included minimal way ARIA for custom components. So again, great work on the Galileo team. We've also offered a series of trainings for the Galileo team, consisting of a number of areas. This is one of them, is learning more about way ARIA. We have one up and coming next week on mobile accessibility. We've given overviews of the WCAG standards and guidelines themselves, the legal landscape. So we've had a whole series of trainings to the Galileo team. And our real goal is, number one, to maintain our reputation and our credibility. We're very passionate about what we do, if it's not already obvious. But our real goal here also is to teach other organizations how to fish. So to share that knowledge base with the Galileo team, so that they're including their ability to provide a sustainable, accessible application and experience for everyone down the road. So that's a quick overview of just some of the major changes that the Galileo team has incorporated. And I will go ahead and open it up to questions. I'm still in full screen mode, so I don't have access to the chat. So maybe
I'm
Joy.
monitoring the chat.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, excellent.
If anyone does have any questions, please type them into the chat. While you were speaking, I didn't see any questions come through, but let me double check. Okay, Wendy had a question, not specifically related. I'm not seeing any questions right now.
Okay, and
Yeah.
we're at 11:15 now, so
yeah, we're right at time.
excellent.
If anyone does have questions later, you will be able to, send an email to John, or send an email to Carolyn, or send an email to Lucy, or respond back to the email that I send out to you all with any questions, and I can forward that on to the appropriate person. I guess we will close out there. I want to thank Lucy, John, and Carolyn for their presentation today. I'd also like to thank everyone on the call for being here. As a reminder, you will have access to a recording of this meeting, and that will be in the email that I send. And if you would like a certificate of participation, please reach out to Dina Anderson. Otherwise, hopefully we'll see you all later this afternoon for Mike White's presentation. Bye, everyone.